Hey Grace Church, my name is Josh. Welcome to the weekly for the week of November 20th. Today we are talking about the triumphal entry. In Mark chapter 11, the gospel records Jesus going into Jerusalem, and this is a massive moment in the life of Christ, in the life of us, in the life of our church. We've got to get the significance of this. So all four Gospels record the event of the triumphal entry. In the book of Mark, this is like the beginning of the third act. So Mark is 16 chapters. Chapters 1 through 8 are Jesus going around Galilee, teaching, growing in his following and talking about the kingdom, teaching on who he is. And so there's all that happening 1 through 8. Mark 9 and 10, Jesus starts asking the disciples, who do the people say that I am? Then he starts talking about going to Jerusalem, and the disciples are like, what's in it for me? And so all that's happened in 3 years. Mark 1 through 10 is 3 years of Jesus' life. Mark 11 through 16 is 1 week of Jesus' life. So this is where the story gets interesting. And for us to feel the significance of this story, we have to understand what's happening. So Jesus is typically, responsive in the Gospels. Like people come to him for healing. He's responding to the Pharisees. But all of a sudden, Jesus is very proactive. He's going into Jerusalem. He's telling the disciples, hey, you're going to get this donkey at this time in this way. We're going to walk in from this part of the city. We're going to move forward like this. And even on the way in, there's this guy that calls him the Son of David. And he's like, yes, that is who I am. So all of the hiddenness of Christ is about to become overturned. He's about to reveal who he is in a significant way. So the gap between what they saw in Jerusalem and what we're experiencing is almost like a wedding. Like if we were to talk about a wedding and say there's this guy and girl and they're dating, and then there's this really big moment where the guy drops on one knee and proposes, and then they get to the wedding and the guy goes down front, and everyone in the crowd's anticipating this moment of the back doors opening and the bride coming down. Like all of you understand that. You get that. You feel that. You know what it looks like. Well, in the story of the triumphal entry, this is Jesus walking to the front of the church and saying, I am the groom, and the crowd gets it. They understand what's happening. Well, why do they understand what's happening? Because there's 3 primary prophecies that are being fulfilled in the story. One of them comes from the book of Genesis 49, where there's this reference of the tribe of Judah having a scepter. A scepter is this the thing the king has. And so in Genesis 49, there's this picture of the scepter will always be in the tribe of Judah, and it will end when it lands in the one whom it belongs. And so Jesus riding into Jerusalem is a fulfillment of Genesis 49, that the king is here. So the crowd gets that. They understand that. Secondly, there's this picture in Ezekiel where Ezekiel prophesies that the glory of God leaves the temple and goes out to the east, but the glory of God will come back to the temple from the east, from the Mount of Olives, from Bethany. Where does Jesus ride in on the donkey? He rides in from the east, from the Mount of Olives, from Bethany. And then where does he go when he gets in Jerusalem? Directly to the temple. So these people are overwhelmed that their king is coming. He's bringing the glory of God back to the temple. And then he shows up on a donkey, which from Zechariah chapter 9, it says that the Son of Man, the Son of David, will ride in on a donkey that's never been ridden before. So when Jesus tells his disciples, go get this donkey, bring him to me, that's a prophetic, messianic prophecy being fulfilled from Zechariah chapter 9. So because all these prophecies are happening and Jesus is walking into town, there's about 500,000 people that are gathering there, waving their palm branches. This is like the flag of the nation of Israel. They're waving that. They're excited. But for us, the question is, when Jesus goes into Jerusalem, they all want him to be the king, but what kind of king do they want him to be? And that same question could be asked of us, because what's happening in the riding into Jerusalem, it's almost like a proposal, to go back to this wedding illustration. When a guy drops down on one knee and says, will you marry me? He's kind of forcing the issue. And you either say, yes, I want to marry you, or no, and you probably break up. Like you probably don't stay together after he proposes and you say, no, hard pass, I would not like to be with you. That's what the triumphal entry is. Jesus is forcing the issue. He's like, you crown me as the king because that's who I am, or you have to kill me and you have to consider me to be crazy. And this is where C.S. Lewis gets Jesus as either the liar, the lunatic, or the Lord. But what's happening in the triumphal entry is this is the hard news, is that Jesus is the king. And he's forcing the issue on all of us. Are you going to crown me as king, or are you going to push me aside as a lunatic that needs to die with the criminals? And that's what's happening in the story. And so for us to recognize this is going on, what do we do with that? What do we do with that? And so that's the question we asked this Sunday, and it's the question that Jesus is asking all of us. Will you crown him as king over your life? Or do you dismiss him and push him aside? And the thing about Jesus is he's going to be the king that he is, not the king you want him to be. And these people in the crowd, they wanted him to be a certain kind of king, and he rejects that. Because he comes lowly, riding on a donkey. He comes lowly, laying down his life for them. And he's a different kind of king, looking to us to king him for who he is. What makes us want to crown Jesus as king is the beauty of what's behind the story of the triumphal entry. So yes, Jesus is the Son of Man coming from the east to bring back the glory of God to the temple. Yes, he's riding in on a donkey. Yes, he is the king from the tribe of Judah. Yes, yes, yes. But what makes him worthy of our worship is that he removes his robe, removes his crown, though he is king, and he takes on the place of the criminal. And they mock him. They put a fake robe on him and a fake crown on him, and they mock him and ultimately kill him. And he raises from the dead, declaring that he is king over all. And the Bible is clear. He will return again. He will come back to Jerusalem according to the prophecies. And when he lands on the Mount of Olives this time, it will be on a white horse, and the Mount of Olives will smash into two pieces. And so he's coming again as the king. And we live in this time of grace. And so in this season of grace, I think it's fitting for us as Grace Church to say we're going to crown Jesus as our king day after day, even when it's difficult and it doesn't make sense. Because listen to me, Jesus is not a king who wants to hurt you. He's a king that wants to heal you. And so Grace Church, let's be healed by our King Jesus.